And we are beginning a new story. There you go. Yeah, you just hide that. We're beginning a story called The Goblet. The Goblet. So, oh, I realized I pulled it up also on my screen on Safaria to give a little background, but I didn't. I'm having trouble keeping track of all the different elements of this class. So I have to apologize now to the people in person because we have the Ruth Calderon translation, but sometimes it's nice to see other translations. So I'm going to read through this story, but what I have here that I'm sharing on the Zoom as I share my screen is the original Talmud text. Maybe you could keep it up like that.
Yeah, like this.
Yeah. Because I wanted to show everyone the context. The story begins with Homa, the wife of Abaye, but the context is all about, this is in the tractate of Ketubot. The Ketubah is the marriage contract, which really is about the finances of marriage. And just making sure all this is happening right. Okay, no, we're good.
Yeah, okay.
And so there are different things that a husband is paying for or providing for the wife. And it turns to a conversation about wine and sort of tangential to the conversation about whether women drink and how much they drink.
That's so.
Then Homa, the wife of Abaye, is going to come with her claim to her ketubah money, saying you have to also pay me for the wine. So that's that's where we're heading. But I just want to show you, and if you can see, I apologize. This was what I didn't print, but this is the context. The earlier conversations in the Gemara are, Abaye, who's actually going to be the subject of this story, is saying in the presence of her husband, she gets 2 cups of wine, not in the presence of her husband, she drinks 1 cup. This whole premise is that women don't really drink, or they shouldn't drink out in front of other men, or it's not proper for certain women to drink, or, 1 cup here. I'm now skipping down. We're not at our story yet, but it was taught 1 cup of wine is good for a woman. 2 cups is a disgrace. 3 cups, she's going to get really feisty. She's going to start to verbally request sexual intercourse, being unseemly. Like she's going to start throwing herself at her husband. That's another way of saying that. After 4 cups, she will request to this from even a donkey in the marketplace. Now, why Ruth Calderon chose not to focus on this part of the Gemara is a mystery.
But I'm grateful.
So, I mean, obviously they're having this conversation tongue in cheek. Obviously, they don't really think that's what women start to do on their 4th cup. I don't know what would happen on Seder night.
Exactly. For sure, she's not doing the dishes.
No. And Rava. So Rava is another character in this conversation. Rava and Abaye are always sparring with each other. They are, I'm going to talk to you about them in a moment, but they are study buddies. They are chavruta. So here Rava says, oh, a woman should not drink only if her husband is not with her, but if her husband is with her, it's okay. There's some kind of propriety when it's only her husband that's the man around, but when she's, I don't know, out with other men.
So there's like a fear of women's sexuality.
Yes, like all the what's the word when you have inhibition? All the inhibitions come down, and who knows what will happen. And by the way, to be fair, the prohibition against drinking the wine of a pagan is one of the reasons given. The main reason given is what's in Hebrew, it's mishum chatnut, lest we marry them.
Okay. That
when you drink together, you have a social bond, and maybe who knows where drinking leads and what you're going to say, or whose son you're going to wed to whose daughter, or mishum chatnut, that our daughters are going to marry their sons, like some kind of thing like that. That like wine will lead to, well, we could say wine will lead to mixed dancing.
Yeah,
that's right. Exactly.
That's so funny. Have you seen The Bride of Jerusalem?
No.
It's like It's
No,
like,
no,
it's
no,
like
no,
you're, this
It's
is,
exactly this.
well, it's very close. I just seen the first of this series and it's,
Oh,
There's a chat here.
yeah, it's really,
Okay, thank you, Mike.
I'm hooked.
what
Uh,
platform is it on? Netflix?
Netflix,
Oh,
Maybe did the.
What's it called?
The Bride of Jerusalem.
thank you. All right.
And it's,
Oh, is
it goes
Oh, was
over
it?
the course of 40 years. It starts in 1917 during the Ottoman Empire's last days. And it ends up, anyways, it's
Okay,
riveting.
okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for the recommendation. We'll have to check it out. So now, we are going to read the story. So our friends in the physical room, you can see what I'm reading from on the screen there, but you don't need to read from there because you have the Ruth Calderon version in front of you. It's nice to just have both available.
Mhm.
Okay, so the Gemara now is going to tell a story about Rava and Abaye. Actually, before we do that, did anyone have a question or a comment or anything so far? I just want to make sure. Unmute if able to. Oh, Richard.
Was Barbara, I have a question about what Barbara said. Barbara, were you referring to the beauty queen of Jerusalem?
Sorry, the beauty queen of Jerusalem. Sorry.
Ah,
I was
okay.
thinking of the bride of, from the previous,
Oh, the bride of one night.
yes, sorry. Yes, the
Okay.
beauty queen of Jerusalem. Very sorry.
Thank you, Richard. Thanks. Okay. I thought I heard something. in this
Mhm.
room. So here's what I want to say about Rava and Abaye. Rava and Abaye are the last generation Amoraim. So they're later, probably fourth or fifth. You know, I'm gonna look it up for next time. I'm gonna get it right. Or you can. I should have done that before. The years of Rava and Abaye. I'm gonna get that quickly. And they are pairs. So we often learn about these rabbis in pairs. Oh, here we go. So he died in the 4th century. He was late 3rd, 4th century Babylonia. The later, okay, so the 4th generation Amoraim, the Amoraim went for about 5-6 generations. So they're later-ish in the generations of Amoraim, of the rabbis of the Talmud. And so Rava and Abaye are like the same way we have Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, who are often quoted as arguing together with each other as chavruta.
Mhm.
We have Rava and Shmuel, they're the earliest generation. So Rava and Abaye appear in many debates in the Talmud.
Mhm.
And happens to be that most of the time Rava wins, very few of the times Abaye wins. I can't remember the exact number. Ruth Calderon talks about that. But regardless, they are very tight. And now we're opening this scene where Abaye's wife is coming to Rava because Abaye has died. And when the husband dies, she has the claim, a ketubah claim, meaning there's a financial obligation that is now obligated on his estate.
Mhm.
So you come to claim your ketubah money. That's kind of the way that it would work. So I had a teacher once who said, you know, I don't know why people are obsessed with the ketubah artistry, because the ketubah is like the least romantic document. It's a
Yeah.
financial contract, and it says if we divorce or I die,
Yeah.
here's the money you can come claim. It's not really just that. It also enumerates the obligation, you know, during the marriage, and that I will protect you and care for you and provide for you and all of that. But it was a legal obligation. So Homa, the wife of Abaye, is coming to like Abaye's best friend,
Mhm.
who's in charge of the courthouse, and saying, okay, give me the money. And what Ruth Calderon writes about is sort of this triangle
Mhm.
that ensues when Abaye's wife comes to the best friend. Let's see what happens. Okay. So we were saying earlier, you know, we could either spend our whole class on this, or we could spend a shorter amount of time and jump right to hers. I feel like let's give it its time and see how far we go. And then if we want to start her story, we can. Abaye's wife. So Homa, the wife of Abaye, comes before Rava. And the translation that I'm looking at on the screen always is, you know, Safaria uses the translator that fills in some of the details. So it says, after Abaye died. as Rava was the local judge. Okay. She said to him, apportion sustenance for me, as I am entitled to be sustained by Abaye's heirs. Like, you have to rule now on my ketubah. How much does Abaye's estate owe me? And so Rava does it. That's his job. He's the judge of the court. Rava apportioned sustenance for her. So there's no conversation. There's an exchange. I come, please do this, and he does it. He does his job. Now she's not happy with whatever he's decided. She subsequently says to him, apportion wine for me as well. Like, you left something off the list here. What about wine? So let's think about what wine represents in the conversation up until now. And now they're bringing in this example of someone who is entitled to money. Is she also entitled to money for wine? And now Rava is going to argue with his friend's widow. Rava says, I know Nachmani, Abaye's name, other name, did not drink wine. So, and in Ruth Calderon, he just says he wouldn't serve you wine. Like, you're claiming this. So what is, let's pause here. What is this comment about? Or what is this argument about? She says, give me the money for the wine. He says, Nachmani, he didn't drink wine.
So he's accusing her of trying to grift
Yeah,
money.
you're taking
Yeah,
advantage
yeah,
of the
yeah.
system.
But is she asking for money to provide for her in the future, not in her life with Abaye?
That's
So she may be planning
Well,
ahead.
I think the
No.
idea of the ketubah is to replace the income or the financial support that the husband provided.
Right.
That's what I have a right to. So
But-
he provided food, shelter, clothing.
Yeah, but because he didn't
And so
drink,
this-
she
this-
didn't
this.
drink, but maybe she wants to.
No,
drink.
no, but still the ketubah doesn't
So-
offer you a future.
The in
Well, that-
between,
okay, that's
and
what it
Laura, this sentence, since you were not accustomed to drinking wine during your husband's lifetime, you're not entitled to do it after his death. That's what the argument that Rava is saying is, no. Abaye wasn't a wine drinker. You guys weren't drinking wine during your marriage. You don't get wine in your alimony now, or whatever we'll call it.
But
So,
life
yeah, so
changes.
she's pushing the legal bounds.
Uh.
He's saying, I'm the authority.
Okay.
What do you make of this? He calls him by another name.
Yeah,
It's like a nickname.
It's like
it's
term
an
of endearment.
intimacy. It's an intimacy.
Wait a minute.
So, yes, Esther, go ahead.
What about it? I'm not so sure I trust him.
Well, no kidding.
He's like
He
a
can be
crony.
making this up for his own sake, God knows where.
So he's, well, his own sake, not necessarily, because he's ruling on what the estate owes this woman. He
she
has
has a
the court, and
ketubah.
the courthouse is not going to pay it. He's ruling based on this marriage contract, the estate of Abaye owes you X amount of financial support per month.
But he's pulling
But he's,
rank on her.
but yes, maybe, so maybe is he pulling rank?
In terms of intimacy, I'm.
Is he
thinking of
claiming
relationship?
more intimacy with him?
Yeah.
I know him.
Yeah.
I called him Nachmani. I saw him every day,
He's
more
contested.
hours than you did probably, because we hung out in the Beit Midrash all day, every day. I miss him more than you. I don't know. I'm just thinking,
yeah.
what could the competition really be
exactly.
about here?
I don't know
I-
I don't know if it has any relevance, but it says literally in the text, apportion wine for me, and doesn't say apportion money for wine for me. So she seems to be asking directly for the wine, and maybe the commentator would have put in, inside the bolded text, money for wine, if that's what it was. But again, I don't know if it's
I'm gonna
important.
look up at the original here. I don't think so. My sense is not. Sokli mizone. So mizone is the Hebrew or the Aramaic here, which comes from mazon,
Yeah.
like food, and then pasakla. He gives the ruling on it. Sokli chamra. What about, like, you gave me food, what about wine to drink? So I don't think that she's asking for that per se in the moment, but the financial value of wine, because wine, I need wine at my table. And then he says, Amar la yadana be ben Nachmani. I know that Nachmani de lo havashat chamra. He didn't drink wine. I mean, by the way, what else would he have drank? Because they didn't have tap water.
Right.
So it could have
Right.
been, I mean, they did have other fermented, like beer and things like that, that would be cheaper maybe than wine. So,
He was a Scotch drinker.
yeah,
Didn't
like,
drink
but
wine.
I know what he used to eat, but what are they arguing about? They're arguing about what used to happen at the kitchen table. So how is he an authority on that?
True.
He doesn't know what happened at their table. He wasn't there,
Right.
even if he saw the other, even if he was with with her husband all day, every day.
Right. So
Oh, but there's a competition
I'm
here.
sorry that
It's-
I'm scrolling now back. I know it's harder on the screen. But
There's a rivalry here.
rule on
That's-
this support, rule on that support. No, you don't get that support because I knew your husband
Where's the
can't-
money coming from?
Yeah.
from his
From his
estate.
children, his estate, his, that if there's a widow, remember, a woman cannot financially support herself. That's a given.
Okay,
That's the assumption. And the ketubah, by the way, that same teacher of mine who said the ketubah is not romantic. He also said, well, the ketubah is the most romantic thing because you're binding yourself to this person, not only through love, but also through finances. And you're saying, I'm willing to bet my money on this bond. But after the man dies, the widow's left alone. His sons have to support her.
but if he was learning you all day, where was the money coming from?
So most of these folks who learned also had some businesses on the side or
Okay.
something, some way, or it's a good question. Would the community?
Or the
support-
community supports. them.
Yeah, sometimes.
The
you may
wives
see-
did a lot of the work.
Yes, but more so like they had a little, buying and selling or something on the side. Although it's not someone of a Baye stature, he would have been a full-time student.
So I have a
Like
question.
there's more prestige to that. So
Okay.
that's a good question. Were there other members of his household who were working? I don't-
Inherit,
I
did
don't
he have
know.
an inheritance?
I don't know.
I have a question, just technically, is this fellow the only one that is allowed to negotiate the ketubah? Wouldn't
Rabba?
he, I'm saying, isn't there another notary she could have gone to that
Okay.
was not
Rabba's
personally?
the highest
like-
ranking rabbi.
I know, but he's.
And he
he's-
runs the court.
But he should, okay,
He runs the
he
court.
should recuse himself because he has a personal relationship.
that's
He
a-
can't,
That's a present day.
I
kind of,
understand that,
yeah.
but I'm just saying in terms of
Well,
bias,
actually, that's
that's-
really important because
it's-
I think that's
this is
I
the
think
crux of
point
the,
of this story.
exactly,
Is
that's,
that he's ruling, but then he's also bringing in his
but he's not
personal-
impartial in the
Yeah,
decision
Yeah,
making.
but that gives him more information, maybe. He's saying
I
to
know,
her,
but
but
you-
you don't drink wine. Anyway,
Anyway,
let's
okay.
move forward a little bit.
All right,
I know Nachmani, he doesn't drink wine. She says to him, I swear by my master, meaning I swear my lord, he used to give me wine to drink in cups as large as this size goblet. And she gestured with her hand to show how big the cup of wine would have been. And while she's showing him the size of the wine cup, the goblet, her arm became uncovered.
oi.
There's a moment of revealing her
Oh my
body.
God.
And in that moment, a great light fell upon the courtroom. A great light shined in the courtroom.
Mhm.
So her beauty was like radiant. Even just that little wrist.
Jewish porn.
Arm was exposed. Talmudic porn. Oh,
boy.
I love this class. So, by the way, I said this at the beginning, Ruth Calderon is choosing stories that
Yeah.
have these overtones of
Sure,
sexuality and questions
Definitely a
around
theme.
women's power. So, but what the radiance is I mean, what does light represent here? Light is not just her physical beauty. Light is something
Illuminating.
godly,
Yeah.
something spiritual
An
power.
epiphany.
Yeah, yeah. So her light shined because of her great beauty. And Rafa is a guy of the spirit, right? So it's in his perception that her beauty is seen as this like
Yeah.
flash of light. Right? There was light. So what does he say next? That's a trick question. It says a great light fell upon the courtroom. What does he say next? Nothing. He runs away. Rabba stood up and went home, it says.
He was aroused. He went home and
Rabba
had
arose, went-
intercourse with his.
That's what's about to happen. That's what's about to happen.
He got excited.
Okay. Not her from the wine, right? Remember what we just said?
No, the
Don't give the
arm.
woman
It was the
too much
arm.
wine unless she's around her husband, because then at least she'll be with him. She'll throw herself at him. He gets excited by this beauty of this arm. So he has to run home to his wife. Which, I mean, by the way, that is expressing that there is a sanctioned outlet for sexuality. Just do it with the person that you're married to. Don't do it with your best friend's wife in the courtroom.
Yeah,
You know, if you have an urge, run home and take care of it. And that's what he does.
that you've been coveting for who knows how long. I mean,
Okay,
yeah.
well. That we don't know how long they've been married, but there's gonna be a clue soon, okay? So hang on to that. Rava.
A quick comment
Oh,
on the
yes,
word,
please, go
a
ahead.
quick comment on the word courtroom, because I recently read Basheva Singer's book, In My Father's Court. And his father was a rabbi and a pasuk, and he would give judgments. And really his courtroom was either in the book, was either his living room or the courtyard, in other words, his backyard. So when we say
Yes,
courtroom, it originally
yes.
meant the rabbis or the priests or whatever backyard, or the nobles.
It's a good question. This courtroom would have been, I got the sense of it, and Ruth Calderon paints this image that it's connected to the study house, that it's not his house, because especially he has to run home. But I just want to see the words here. Nafal Nahora B'vei Dina. It says the Beit Din, the Beit Din. Beit Dina is the Beit Din, the court. And then Kam Rava al Levete. He gets up and goes to his house. By the way, house is also often a euphemism for wife. The wife is his house. And then he propositioned his wife. That's basically what it says. He runs home right into the arms of his wife. Which is his house.
Were her arms covered?
Well, they're not. Her arms are not to be covered. So I'll just stick with the Hebrew for a moment. We'll go back, but and it says Tava Lebat Rav Chisda. His wife was the daughter of Rav Chisda. It just gives you her, doesn't give you her first name. It's her last name. Daughter of Rav Chisda is like her last name. Think about it that way. Amrale, she says to him, Bat Rav Chisda, the daughter of Rav Chisda, his wife. And we can discuss why she's referred to that way. Man like, whoa, what happened in the courtroom? Who was there? She knows that this is unusual. He came home in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
And he threw himself at her. Amarla, he said to her, Choma was in the courtroom. Debates who de Abaye, the wife of Abaye. So she doesn't say anything. Instead, what she does is Nafka Abatra Mechata. Sorry. Nafka Abatra. She goes and runs after her. Machtale and strikes her, beats her. Bikolfe Deshida, basically with a padlock.
Oh my
She takes
God.
something from her house, running violently after this other woman. Ad afkala
Wow.
mechule mechoza, until she chases her rival out of town. I'm gonna
Wow.
just skim down we're gonna see it in this English for our friends on Zoom. It's a little easier. So the daughter of Rav Chisda says, who was in the courtroom? Like, this is strange. And he says to her, Homa was there, the wife of Abaye. And so she just picks up the lock of the chest
Mhm.
and goes
Yeah.
striking after her until she drove her out of the city of Mahosa. And she says to her, this is the interesting part,
Yeah.
you've already killed 3 men. Abaye was the 3rd husband. She was a widow 3 times. And now you come to kill
Wow.
another one?
Oh, the
That's-
3rd husband.
Okay.
Oh, well. That throws.
She's a
whole-
man.
You
eater.
are
Yeah.
seducing
Yes.
my husband. Now, she's not upset that she's seducing her husband. She's upset that now my husband's gonna die if he's your 4th, because you're on a roll here. No? Do you read it that way?
No, I just
No.
think that she takes men and she uses them and disposes of them. And not,
Oh.
that they're ruined.
Can you expand this now? So.
Can I say something? Can I just add?
Please, Farla.
When she says, who was just now in the courtroom, as if I sort of feel that it's happened before. Who is this?
Oh.
That he's
Like,
had the same
Not-
reaction
it's
before.
not new to her because he's not letting her have the wine stipend or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's got eyes for other women. I mean, he's
Oh,
not
that's
there.
interesting. I read it the opposite way, that this was such strange behavior that she said, like, what happened in the courtroom? But you're reading it the other way, which is valid, saying, oh, no, not again. What
Not
happened in the
again.
courtron today?
Who was there?
Who now was it?
Yeah,
It's
actually,
valid. It's valid.
I think it's equally plausible. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Rava's wife was immediately suspicious about her husband's behavior, as you said already, Rachel. And she instantly becomes jealous. It just overtakes her. And as a rationalization, she says, you've already killed 3 men. I mean, she hadn't to outlast 3 husbands. My wife's grandmother also outlasted 3 husbands.
Wow.
And so she's rationalizing. She, instead of saying, hey, I'm jealous and I'm envious and I'm angry and I'm becoming aggressive, she wants to, she tries the rationalization to say, you're trying to kill my husband. That's how I read it.
So you do read it, the jealousy
Yeah.
is first. She's not worried about losing her husband,
No.
that her husband's gonna die. She's worried about losing her husband to this other woman.
Well, yeah.
Marilyn, you've been quiet. I'm curious what's going through your mind. Oh, Farla was just saying something. Give it a sec. Farla?
Oh, because it's happened before and she jumps at this, her reaction is so quick. It's like she hasn't even.
Yeah, her reaction is pretty extreme. Yeah.
She's defending her territory.
Mhm.
Maybe one of her husbands was a divorce court judge.
The first one of the earlier
So,
husbands?
yeah, maybe the second or the 3rd
The-
husband was a divorce court judge
Of
of her first
of
husband.
Homa.
Yeah.
1 second. The woman who is upset
Oh, yeah,
is
no,
not the one who's married 3.
no. But the one,
So
but
the-
maybe
This
Homa,
racy.
one of
woman.
her husbands was somebody she met while she was getting divorced.
Oh,
Like-
so she's worried like.
Oh, the
just
next
like
one
the
in
last
line,
time
yeah.
we went next in line.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's funny. I picked on Marilyn just because
Yeah,
I'm
she's so quiet.
curious.
Yeah. you're not-
she's too quiet. We want to know what's
Yeah, you're
going
too
on.
quiet.
I'm being very literal here. I believe she was worried that her husband would would leave her for this
Yeah.
woman.
Sure.
And the rest is rationalization.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's Richard. That's what he's
Yeah.
saying. What do you all make of the lock?
The padlock.
The
The
padlock.
lock is representative of the marriage bond.
I like that. He's locked up, which technically isn't true. He can have more than one wife, which is why she has something to worry about, right? We've talked about this before. Polygamy was not yet outlawed in Jewish law. So she has to assert her territory because people didn't really want sister wives. It wasn't a good
Yeah,
dynamic. That's why they make reality shows about this, because it's his drama.
it's complicated.
It started back with Rachel and Leah, the sisters, and so she doesn't want to cede territory, and she uses this padlock this lock from the drawers, the chest, something that is closed, saying, case closed, he's mine, he's locked in. No? Anyone else have an idea about the lock? Anyone in the Zoom room have an idea about the lock? The symbolism of the lock?
Yeah, I don't think it's symbolic. Personally, I think it just represents something heavy, something hard, that she means business. She didn't want to kill her, so she didn't take a knife, but she's not using her fist, because who knows, maybe Rabba's wife could use, strike back. They're both in a karate class. They're both good. But she took a lock of a chest, meaning she meant business.
So you could also be symbolic and say the lock on her chest, and she
Maybe
rendered herself vulnerable and said, you get the hell off.
I'm
my
thinking of,
husband."
this is the first thing that came to mind in terms of chasing someone with a blunt object. Like, when you play that game Clue,
Yeah,
what did they kill them with? The knife is only one
a wrench.
option.
There
It
was
could be a
wrench,
pipe,
the
a
lead
wrench.
pipe, yeah,
Oh,
that's right.
Lord. It could be the lock from their chest in their house.
No, but I'm just saying the lock and the
And the-
chest, they have
Yes.
double meanings.
Yes, I understand.
So,
Like
and since
the-
we just read about the Nazir and the locks of hair, I mean, I was just having fun with it.
But the lock of
But is
the,
the chest
No,
where she
I
keeps her
don't think you
trousseau?
can
Is
use
that-
the English word
No,
chest.
I know you
But
can.
I'm thinking about who paid Shida? I don't know the etymology of that.
I was just
Aramaic word.
studying The Lady and the Peddler by Agnon,
Oh,
and the very last sentence, it talks about this man who is attached to his familial, his person with iron rings.
Hmm.
So the padlock
Mm.
is like an iron ring, the shape of a ring
An attachment,
for
a circular
marriage.
attachment
Oh.
like that.
It's
Maybe,
just an extension of what I was saying.
Yeah.
maybe,
Sandra?
maybe also, like, people didn't have a lot of possessions. And maybe all her possessions that she came into the marriage with was in this chest. So it represented to her what she brought into this marriage. And she grabs this. It's symbolic of what holds it close and what she's attached her husband with. And
That-
uses
That's
that.
so super interesting, because going back to the larger context, this is a conversation about the finances of the marriage.
Cuba, right.
And exactly, and in Ketubot, there's a big discussion about the dowry or the
Yeah, what she brings in.
nechasim, the possessions that a bride comes in with, that she always has a right to, that you can never take away. But then what does the husband add to that? So she's like, they did have a chest,
Yeah.
right? A dowry chest with those linens
The
and
hope
those-
chest, now my
Right.
mother had a hope
the
chest.
trousseau.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
It's called a hope chest.
Oh, so the chest could really symbolize a woman's right in the marriage.
Maybe she had a lock because she locked the door after her husband, to prevent her husband coming in after all his affairs with women, because she was beautiful and he always looked for the beautiful women, because at the bottom it says, since you showed him your beauty, he will want to marry you. So
It's just,
I think she's beautiful.
How does she even know what happened in the courtroom? We don't know that. She doesn't know that her arm was shown. She doesn't know all those details.
I was
'cause her
just
husband
thinking,
didn't run home.
But she's had a past with him of the similar behavior.
we don't know for sure, right? I
No.
mean, we can read it in either direction. I just thought, oh my gosh, that bride for one night, that wasn't Rava though, that was Rava, different guy, it was a totally different guy. So I thought, oh my gosh, what happens when Rava goes away
Right.
on business trips? Does
Right.
he also get a bride for one night? We don't have any, I don't know of any information about that question. Whether Rava does a lot of traveling, and if so, does he have other women? But I think what's more significant here in this story is the relationship between Rava and Abaye.
Yes.
This is Abaye's widow. And Abaye, it could not have died that long ago. He's in mourning, but when there's a funeral, and we've had this many times, where there's someone who is not in the immediate family and doesn't need to wear that tie or that scarf because they're not technically a mourner, but they want to opt in
Mhm,
because this is their loss too. And I've had that, of course, with,
mhm,
you know, a grandchild or a best friend or
Mhm.
someone who isn't, like, the wife is the widow, right? Is the mourner. And she's the one who has a legal right to the mourning practices and a legal right to the finances of the, like, all these things. What does he get? He's just a friend. So she's coming and flaunting her grief in his face and saying, I was the wife. And it's almost like he's thinking, I mean, this is your third husband. How close could you have been to him? I've been with him for life. I think there's a competition there,
Yeah.
but then of course he gets interested in her. Like, what is that about? Or it's just that these men can't, they're barbaric. I don't know if that's just their pain. Like, what is it saying about men?
They can't control themselves.
Even in the courtroom, that's what a woman's
No,
arm is gonna be. I mean,
Of modesty to this day.
is this about men or is this about women? Is this about how women should behave out in public? Because you never know, even the glint of your arm could be so powerful to a male gaze.
Well,
I'm
but
just saying this,
that's the
or
point. The
are
more you
these-
cover, the more you cover up, I mean, there's this idea that if you don't
more
cover a woman, like,
tantalizing.
I mean, we
Yeah.
see it in,
Yes.
with the niqab and
Yeah.
everything.
right,
That the more you cover a woman, the more any exposed part
Yeah.
becomes, but if
Yeah.
you're in a society where women are walking around in bikinis all day,
right,
you
nobody
know,
that gives a second glance.
they may, but I mean, the point is they don't go crazy or they don't, you know,
Mhm.
it's what you're
Mhm.
used to, so.
So what does this mean about Rava, or what does it mean about the courtroom? Is it the location because of the courtroom? Is it Rava, he's in a moment of vulnerability? Like, maybe it's not
Well, the
really
great
about
light,
that,
but the great light was for everybody. Like, I mean,
the courtroom was seized by a great light.
so that it wasn't just him who found her
That's
exotic
interesting.
and,
There's a comment.
There's a comment, it's not fair to align an attribute to either gender in its entirety. Thank you, Michael. That's right. I mean, I'm trying to give fair interpretation to both sides. Like, is this about men? Is this about women? Of course, neither is about all men or all women. But is there a comment here? Is there a commentary about gender?
Forbid-
here?
Oh,
This is-
it definitely, they don't talk about the reverse. They don't talk about, is there something about Rava that is so attractive? It's always, the man is attracted to something of the woman. It's not, we don't see this vice versa.
And I think that's one of the reasons in many of Ruth Calderon's narratives, she does the opposite. She's trying a little bit of role reversal when she tells the story of, you know, the bride for one night, but the woman is the one who's excited about this rabbi, right? Because we don't get to hear the woman's perspective. We only get to hear the man looking at the women. I see that Esther was trying to say something and then Gloria.
Well, I'm thinking that in this case, it's a case of forbidden fruit is sweet and
Right.
sweeter than, you know, than it always looks better. So this was the forbidden fruit, which is attracted by Abaya, not Abaya, the
Yeah,
judge,
Yeah, well, Rava
Judge.
is the judge and Abaye is the deceased.
right, by the judge. And the response on the part of his wife is kind of natural.
Yeah,
Most wives
yeah.
would be upset if somebody, you know, if they thought that their husband had been enticed by somebody else.
Yeah.
I think
Gloria?
most wives
So
would.
I want to take the role of sex out of this completely and go back to my original comment, which was the question of primacy and intimacy. Here is it's a triangle. You started that at the beginning of the class.
Right.
And I think that that's the essence of the problem here. It's who was closer to
Yeah, who
Abaya.
knew him
Who
better?
knew him better? And so where it comes up, of course, it is in the ketubah and what you award to somebody, which means, yes, you were his significant other. I don't deserve anything. And that's where he's pulling rank.
Yeah.
It's not even a question of sexuality only, although that's a lot of fun to discuss. It's really who matters the most to this person. And it comes back to the same thing about mourning, when you lose a good friend and you're not entitled to tear your tie and wear
Right.
the stuff, but you feel, my God, this person was my life. And I want to mourn accordingly. But it takes away from whoever that person's partner was. So
Right.
that's what this is about.
It takes
It's-
away from,
yeah.
that's interesting, because he is in a position to take away from.
Yeah, and it's not gonna bring back Abaye, so, I would
No.
tell Rava, like,
Let it
chill,
go, let it
yeah,
go.
let it go. But that's what
Other thoughts?
Well, we didn't talk about the fact that she says, I swear my Lord used to serve me wine in goblet this big, right?
Right,
So
okay.
what does that part mean?
Yeah, what's
Because
with this goblet?
what you showed us before is one drink and then it's fine, 2 drinks, he wants to make love with everybody, and 3 drinks she
Right.
cannot control herself. So it pretty means that does it mean that she couldn't control herself and she was having sex with everybody, or because it was just in the house and she was only and it was safe? But
I think it's,
the wine means something, right?
She
Why
wasn't
did she
interested in
stress?
him unless she was drunk.
no, I think she was mocking him. She was challenging him. What do you know?
Yeah.
You used to give me this much wine. How would you know? Like,
You weren't there.
you weren't
don't know
there,
our
and you
relationship.
don't know it, and also implying that they had perhaps a very erotic sex life that he also didn't know about.
So
And
maybe that was also part of that.
I think it
moment
was
that-
a kind of like
that
a
comment.
bridgie, like a
Double entendre.
well, I think that she and this Rabba had an unspoken, there was something unspoken between them.
But she and
The
she and
widow-
oh, the widow.
The widow and Rabba, like
right,
she
yeah.
knows him and she knows what his relationship with. Like there's something, an undercurrent there of, oh, I used to have wine like this much. It's a kind of bold statement to make for a woman to make to a judge. Very
Yes,
bold,
yes.
because she knows what people would think of a woman who drank this much wine.
Her
Right.
husband gave
She
her.
would know what the prevailing opinion would be.
I
But in
want to
line
just
of the
look to
triangle
Zoom
that
for a
shows the
moment.
in line of the
Linda
triangle.
had put a comment in the chat that she's just lost her husband. He's being very disrespectful toward her. Like at the end of the day, she has come as a mourner into the courtroom and he's not honoring where she's at. Sandra and then Richard. Go ahead,
You know,
Sandra, and then Richard.
In light of what Gloria said, this is a triangle, and maybe she's saying, like she's competing with Rava. I drank this much wine, like she's really trying to hold her own in terms of this triangle. Abaye and Rava were close, and she knows that. So she's competing when she's coming and standing up against Rava.
Right.
And
Right.
I don't think she intended her arm to show. I think she was just being so demonstrative and and so trying to prove her point that it just happened.
Richard,
It
you
was
have your hand up,
unintentional.
your Zoom hand. Go ahead.
Yes, I did. We've all heard of the rabbi's tish, the rabbi's table, and here it seems to me that the tables are turned on the rabbi. He admonished the wife of Avaya for wanting wine, because he said, all these terrible things will happen when you have the 4th glass of wine. And he gave this metaphor which we all saw about a donkey. And now, who is the one who turns out to succumb to their bestial or their lizard part of their brain? It's the rabbi.
Right.
So it's, if you wanted to say there's a lesson, hey, it wasn't the woman who really is a danger. It's the rabbi himself who's in danger of also losing himself to lust.
I agree. Yeah.
I see Terry's comment in the chat. Maybe Rava knows something about her previous marriages. So that's really interesting. He does have some insider info. He has already dealt with this woman on 2 previous ketubot. And maybe she didn't get support for wine before, and now she's asking for it because of Abaye. And he's like, what are you kidding me? Abaya never drinks wine. You can't claim for this one. Or maybe she did claim for the last one and now she shouldn't claim for this one because I know he didn't sit around and drink. The other thing that I was thinking about the size of that goblet is before this, they were talking about the number of cups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1 cup, 2 cups, 3 cups. But what if it was a cup this big? You said only 1 cup? Fine, I'm gonna drink
Yes.
this cup. It's like a vat of wine.
Yeah.
But 1 cup, it's only 1 goblet,
Yeah.
it's only 1 cup. Like, there's some play with
Yeah.
like the legal loopholes
Mhm.
you can get through when you're saying it's one
Cup, that's right.
You didn't say 12 ounces.
Right.
8 ounces,
Exactly.
whatever.
Would she have,
Also-
oh,
Yeah, well, Barbara and Marilyn and then Esther.
okay, so
because there's
would
some
she
people who-
have, if this is her third ketubah judgment, so are you entitled to, like, is each ketubah for a next marriage written the same? Like, in other words, let's say the first ketubah was to a wealthy man and you have gotten a very good settlement from that. Now you're remarrying. Is it the same ketubah? Like, you have the same rules?
So I don't know the answer to how the ketubahs relate to each other. I don't know, and that would be something I could look into that might even be discussed in this tractate. I do know that the ketubah amount for a widow is less than someone who's being married for the first time, that she's valued at less, or she's entitled to less. And I don't know if it's because that there's an assumption that she's already been supported or in some way, or if it's because she's just a lesser value.
Or maybe the children are grown. Like,
Yeah, I don't
like,
think that would be
no,
related.
oh, that wouldn't be
No.
part of the.
I don't, but that's a good question. And I want to make sure others, Marilyn and then Esther.
And Michael has a comment.
Okay.
Look at
okay.
Michael's comment.
This is just a side, or because I feel like I don't have the full story, that there's a story behind this story. When I think about the last line, which is the conclusion of the story.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
right.
we're going into micromanaging, micro details, but if you think about the last line, it's really this woman who is reinforcing the mores of the 4th century of keeping yourself clothed so that you don't incite the emotions of another human being. I mean, after all, the judge did come home and have relationship with his wife. He didn't attack.
Yeah, right.
yes.
He's still maintaining his
Something or
honor
whatever.
and his.
So, I
ethics.
mean, she didn't have to feel threatened.
Right.
Yeah.
So
that's
what she's
interesting.
really doing is she's reinforcing. And I mean, even to this day, you have the men, maybe Haredi, and the Muslim men with a hijab, etc., niqab, that the women have to be covered because the men are so vulnerable and fragile.
We
to
have it in
their-
our own.
Okay.
So for me,
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
it has to do with how this woman is repressing another woman.
Mhm,
Yeah,
mhm.
shame on her.
Anyway. it's a
There are
time.
some
Yeah.
chats in the chat and Esther was waiting. Michael, just in terms of this ketubah question, is asking, would they not be distinctive for each marriage? So I don't have an answer for whether there would be any relationship between one ketubah to the next. Yes, I think each one is independent, but there are differences when someone's a widow. So I'm curious to know more about that. And Terry says he got excited too quickly. They may have had a prior relationship in between her marriages. Like this wouldn't have been the first time he met her or
He
knew
saw
her
her
or saw her. Yeah, I don't know. We are running low on time. Esther, quickly.
I think the widow is reacting at the very basic to the judgmental attitude of the Rava. And he is not taking it very well, and then he gets excited about her and we hear what happened. But she says, I lived with my husband and basically I know what we did, he was told me he was going to leave I had a ketubah, so that was in black and white, the writing. And we also drank wine at home. Don't tell me what we did in our house. It's like telling us how to speak in our own house.
Yeah, yeah. You had him in the Beit Midrash, but I had him in the house. This is not your domain. Richard?
Well, first I noticed that she's not an heir. You know, she has to say to the rabbi, I would like to have sustenance from the
Right.
heir. So this is probably the way things were then.
Yes.
The wives weren't the heirs. The second thing is, this seems to be on the surface to be an admonition against the wife of the deceased. You know, she had the chutzpah to ask for more than sustenance. She had the chutzpah to ask for wine, and then she inflamed the rabbi with her beautiful arm or wrist, and then maybe she got the punishment she deserved for being so, forthright and so on. So it could be on the face of it just anti-woman
That
message.
this is what happens when women start up.
Mhm.
And by the way, if she's driven out of town, she's never gonna get her money. She can't come back to this courthouse. The other Beit Din, she's gonna go try to claim her ketubah there, who knows? If that other, but a Beit Din would be local, not, some national Beit Din. So she's being refused which is what's rightfully hers. I'm conscious of the time. And it's funny, I thought, we're not going to spend the whole time on just the story, but here we are. And it's because there's so much to tease apart, and it will help us appreciate even more what Ruth Calderon does with it. So we will pick that up next week. And I know that there were more comments, so feel free to stay another couple minutes if there's something else someone wanted to say. But we're going to officially end and say happy Wednesday. And for those of you who are somewhere